Hi everyone, welcome to the Boring Enterprise Nerds Nerdletter prep episode,
Yeah.
I guess you could call it. Whatever we've been calling it. This what this is. I am Paul Moderman, and with me, as always, is the amazing Yelena Perfilieva. Please say hi, Yelena.
Hello, everyone.
And what we do is we just literally show and tell with each other the things that we're thinking about writing for in our next newsletter. And it's kind of a fun discussion time, and we get all kinds of cool, crazy, kooky insights and suggestions from each other to make things happen. So without further ado, I'll jump in and start blabbering about my own stuff,
Awesome.
and we'll see where we go. So let me share my stuff here. Hopefully you can see that, Yelena.
Yep. Developer keynote. Yep.
Yeah. So a lot of my stuff this week or this edition is actually coming or inspired by there are two big tech conferences going on right now this week. There's Google Cloud next, and then there's Microsoft Ignite, both of them happening this week.
Mhm.
So there's lots of like announcements, coming soon. Check out this. There's lots of all kinds of that stuff. And so there's several kind of things that I kind of keyed on in both of those things that I thought were really interesting. So one is the developer keynote for Google Cloud Next had 10 of their like product managers and VPs and stuff like that
Mhm.
come in and give their predictions for by the end of 2025, I predict that XYZ, right?
Mhm.
And so I listened through it and I took some notes, and there's some interesting things going on. Some things are kind of like, yeah, okay, I get it. But some other kinds are like, oh, interesting. We'll see how this goes. And I don't think all of them are worth necessarily talking about, but enough of them are worth talking about that I think we can get some interesting stuff out there. So, for example, one of the PMs said AI is going to be the primary driver of moving to a 4-day work week
Hmm.
by 2025. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'd be more power to it, but let's see, right?
Yeah.
Um, because it feels like, oh, but if you can get 5 days worth of work done in 4 days, imagine how much you could get done in 5 days, right? I think there'll
Yeah.
be definitely that sort of opposite pull, by some companies and some whatever. So it'll be interesting to see how that flies out. One of the guys predicted that the barriers between transactional and analytical data will disappear. And I thought to myself, wasn't that the promise of HANA?
Yeah. That's
Like that's
exactly
the
what
promise.
already happened.
Yeah, that's the promise of HANA. I guess I don't know how to I don't know how to analyze whether that has actually happened.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, because it's certainly the promise and it's certainly the capability of HANA databases, right?
Mhm.
But there's a cynical part of me that always thinks if that was actually true and true to a large degree, why does only SAP use HANA? Why isn't HANA offered as a and marketed and successful as a general purpose database? Right? In other words,
Mhm.
I mean, technically you can, right? You can go buy licenses just for HANA itself, but I don't think excuse me,
Mhm.
hardly any real world solutions other than SAP solutions use HANA as a database.
Yeah.
So it is either the case that that is not as true as we might think in SAP circles,
Mhm.
or SAP somehow doesn't care to expand that market for HANA. And I guess I don't know which of those is true, or some other third thing obviously could be true. But it just made me think of the guy said that like it was amazing. And the first thing I thought was, but that's what people have been saying about HANA for, umpteen years now, right?
Mhm. It's kind of
So there's,
it's kind of a
sorry.
bit strange to hear things like that because typically we in SAP world we tend to be one step behind everyone, but
Yeah.
now it feels like almost we we supposedly already have it to the extent, and we actually had an interesting presentation internally where I worked at Mindset with our new employee who is expert in data analytics. And I actually asked him this exact question when HANA was announced, on tech at stage. Everyone kind of felt about it. Everyone apparently who does not work with with analytics thought of it as, it's going to be BW killer. It's going to be so all this BW, which everyone hated really in
Yeah,
ECC, how it worked with all those stupid extractors. Oh, thankfully, finally we're gonna be running reports directly in our transactional database, and that's kind of what was implied.
yeah,
But I guess at the end, it's not really exactly how it happened. Maybe to some companies it did, and they were able to do much more with their main transactional system. But BW still exists. Now we have BW on HANA. So I'm wondering, to me, it's not like barriers are between data really. It's more like there are tools for analytics and for predictable analytics that do not really belong in transactional space to me.
mm,
If it's really those tools that someone is after, then I don't know. I don't think it's even like the same conversation. So looks like I know either some strange stuff going on in Google and somehow it's behind on database business, or I don't know, or some kind of very big misunderstanding between what one person is saying, what others are understanding.
yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, definitely interesting object to explore.
yeah. And there's some other ones. Let's see. There's one other ones that will like a low code prediction, but it was kind of along the lines of most of those predictions that happen these days. So
Yeah.
anyway, so there's a couple of predictions there that were really cool. Um, Over to Microsoft and announcement of another SAP to Azure connector thing,
Hmm.
which, by itself isn't, it's kind of a shrug, right? By itself, one more connector of some kind is like, okay, who cares? But what I have noticed is that in the last probably year or so, there are a lot more SAP connectors out there for the hyperscaler tools to use to like to suck up SAP data or to have live access to SAP data.
Hmm.
And so what I really wanted to do is just kind of do a little bit more of a survey in a sense of what Microsoft has, what Google has, what AWS has in terms of SAP specific data connector technology pieces, right?
Hmm.
Because there's this, which is okay, fine. There was also an announcement at the I was at the Power Platform conference a couple weeks ago, and there was an announcement of some other SAP into Power Platform stuff that was also like data connector related there,
Hmm.
and lots of further things in lots of further places for that. And so I just want to kind of come back to that because I've written about that a couple times with a couple other things, and I kind of think that SAP being the weirdo it is in the tech world has just kind of created this universe where like it's almost like SAP is the last kid to get on the bus
Hmm.
in terms of the tooling for the hyperscalers to really do a better job of ingesting and using SAP data for their delivered tools. So anyway, that's something I'm probably gonna think about and maybe write about for this episode or this episode, this issue.
Yeah, I think SAP has been a little bit weird about their data ingestion, as you said.
Yeah,
Remember that whole indirect access debacle
that's
that
right.
happened, like
Yeah,
with some, I know, huge scandals, etc. I think it's kind of reality that's just not going to go away. People want to use SAP data in other places, not
yeah,
necessarily in SAP. And yeah, I think everyone has been saying SAP would be wise to just allow it, and I think they do understand it. And yeah, it's great to see those connectors, but it can still be a little bit weird, I feel.
yeah,
And I still hear once in a while, like, oh, cautiously, are we going to run into some kind of indirect access issues? So yeah, another very interesting topic, I think.
yeah. The there's we secret preview for some Bodark stuff, by the way, is that
Ooh.
we play in this space too, and we're gonna have something that we'll announce at some point that's related to all this stuff too. So it's very top of mind for tons of people out there in the world
Mm-hmm.
who are looking at like how do I get SAP into other places,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So you're
Um,
gonna do like your version of Wind Shuttle, Bow Shuttle.
what? Oh, so actually, did you? Man, some behind the inside baseball here. Did you know that? You remember that Mindset had a Google Sheets SAP tool. Did you ever know that? I don't know if you knew that or
It
not.
was way before me.
Yeah,
Not really. Yeah.
that was and it was called Cloud Simple, but
Mm-hmm.
its first name was Cloud Shuttle
Mm.
because I mean it was very clearly, you know, Wind Shuttle, but for Google Sheets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, when you said Bow Shuttle, I was like, oh yeah. Well, actually, when you think about it, there's that kind of thing has been kind of hopping around this space for a while.
And I
I
mean,
wrote I wrote the code for that thing, by the way, too.
oh,
Anyway,
cool, cool.
um,
I mean, Wind Shuttle was not throwing shade on it at all. I think it was pretty cool tool, at least for the time
yeah.
when it came out. It was pretty revolutionary and very desired. People just went
Oh
nuts
yeah,
for it. Yeah,
absolutely.
awesome. All right.
Um, I love AI.
Oh
I
yes.
love all that stuff. So there's another way, another thing. So Microsoft has a tool they call Power Automate, which is like a little workflow kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
And they have a new feature where, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Where's the,
When you were doing this,
right.
I just random comment. I always kind of like really Microsoft's website in general. I don't know if it might be
Oh
unpopular
yeah.
opinion, but I just like the elegant simplicity of it, maybe. I really dislike SAPs with that, black strip of death that we have been calling.
Hmm.
And SAP has their own, obviously, web styling and design,
Yeah.
but it doesn't seem to be as consistent, especially across their different pieces of web.
Hmm.
And it's just, yeah, it's like you just made it larger, and text is nice and large. I can really read it very
Yeah.
well. In SAP, it's always like there's like huge header, huge title, tiny text.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You're totally right. And not only is it the design, but it's also the actual content.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
the Microsoft help stuff is amazing.
Mm.
Amazing. I love when I get the chance to do .NET projects.
Mm-hmm.
I seriously love programming in .NET. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, part of it is the language, the C sharp, I love the language, but part of it is also like the help documentation like actually helps me do what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I can rarely say the same thing for SAP documentation, right?
Yeah.
I
I
get
just
practically all of my help from like a blog of somebody else who's
yeah.
figured it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's that, except for UI5.
Mm-hmm.
UI5 has better documentation than other parts of stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to what I was talking about though.
Yeah. Sorry.
Is the no, that's okay. That's a good diversion. Um, Power Automate, which is like a workflow builder kind of thing, now also has this like describe your flow in everyday words, and it will build the flow for you. So the
Mm.
description they use here is every time someone responds to a forms survey, post a message to Teams and send an email. And then what happens is, where did it go? I thought there was a picture of it. Oh, well, they don't do a very good job of making the picture, but this this flow right here did exactly what that description said
Mm-hmm.
and created a flow with that with a Teams connector and an email connector and a SharePoint connector all in the right places. And
Mhm.
all you had to do is like go fill in the things. And now one of the cool things about it is, no, I can see if I can find that. The other piece of that that was kind of lets you peek into the insight of it is that when you go look at the how-to of it, oh, and there's a better picture of the how-to right there. It says boom, boom, boom. It creates that for you, right? One of the limitations I thought was awesome. It says Power Automate supports descriptions written in English only. Descriptions you write in other languages might work, but they're not supported, which
Mhm.
means the AI behind the scenes doesn't care if it's English or not,
Hmm.
right? The AI behind the
Interesting.
scenes is powerful enough that you don't need to write it in English. I mean, they're supporting English, but
Mhm.
what that means is in their testing, they discovered that other languages work too for it. Like
Mhm.
the AI model, the
Yeah.
natural language processor doesn't care. So that's
Wow.
just a super cool feature, I think, of
Interesting.
that stuff.
I
So
should
there's
should
that.
totally confuse it with Russian, I guess.
Yeah, I can
To
I
be
can
like,
imagine that the Russian may not work in this
yeah,
case.
probably
Let's see.
not.
Um, and then finally, I know I'm doing more than usual. Well, I'm doing. I think I'm talking about four this time, and I'll make a choice here. But this is a smaller techie thing that I've noticed lately too. Is that lots of places are announcing the hyperscalers are announcing their like global databases,
Mm-hmm.
that work across the world, and they have. Is it on this page? I thought I opened the right page. Oh, darn it. Anyway, the point is one of the things that they announced is that they are creating a Postgres adapter for their Cosmos DB, which is by itself again not super interesting, but in this space, what you see across many of the hyperscaler databases is that they are announcing Postgres wire compatibility for their non-Postgres databases, which has this effect of like it's focused on not just the new stuff, but migrating your old stuff in there
Mm-hmm.
now, right? So if you've written an app that has a Postgres database, you can relatively safely just shift it over into this new cloud pay by the drink model database with all of your code just plop right there ready to go. So again, kind of a techie thing. I don't know if I necessarily have enough to write about for it, but when I saw the announcement, I noticed that, and I thought it was an interesting tidbit. So that's all I have to say about that.
Awesome.
And that, by the way, that's all I have to say about my stories too. So we'll see. Somewhere in here, there'll be three stories that pop up, and we'll see which ones they are.
Yeah, place your bets now. So yeah, yeah, interesting. We both had bonus story. I also have four potential subjects, and
Ooh,
we'll need to make some decisions what I'm gonna talk about. All right, so let me
show us
share
your
my
show
screen
us your
now.
magic.
Show us,
Yeah.
yeah, let's see what I got. So obviously, talk of the town has
Oh
been,
yeah.
Meta Quest Pro, Metaverse, and I found this specific article which talks about great conspiracy, I guess, between Meta and Microsoft to introduce kind of Metaverse and Teams together to do not sure what exactly, because all those articles,
Yeah.
they are, I would say, they're pretty critical of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
former Facebook and Meta, and just basically the whole internet is making fun, which I thought there are several, not just one, but two TechCrunch posts that were just
Yeah.
totally destroying
They totally
destroying the
beat up on
whole
Mark. Yeah.
presentation. Mark, I'm
Yeah.
like, ouch, but they're also right. I think yeah, I like how they called it hand wavy announcements and some cherry picked like revenue information that we can totally relate, I think, from SAP world as well.
Yeah.
That's totally happening. So
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of somewhat funny articles, and I don't know if it's fair to pile up and make more fun about Meta with their whole VR sets and metaverse and everything. But now somehow Microsoft is involved, or this might end up being my bonus subject for the
Yeah.
viewers here.
This
Um,
is
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
I'm sorry. No, all I was gonna say is like the with this VR stuff, especially with the workplace stuff. Now that I think I'm just gonna be a remote the rest of my career probably.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like there is there's the idea and there's the implementation.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is something I can totally love. I would love to kind of in that little picture right on your screen there.
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather sit around a table in a meeting than have everybody's face staring at my face
Mm-hmm.
like a Zoom window. I would
Yeah.
love that. I would love that. Um, do I know or think that that's how it will reliably work right now? I don't know. I kind of doubt it at the moment. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Maybe. But the idea of it, at least from this particular standpoint of like the meetings and the get-togethers, I can kind of dig that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I think it's ready for it, right? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think it might look like maybe very early days of gaming. I don't
Mm.
know, Paul, if you're old enough to remember like super early games. Like if we look, let's say, the same Civilization, the first one was like pixels, literally,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but it had good idea. So good
Hmm.
idea evolved, and or other, I mean, main kind of architecture, main idea still stayed. It still remains the same, but it grew a lot. It expanded a lot, and purely graphics and presentation, it's a far cry from where it started from. So I'm wondering if this is essentially equivalent of pixelated civilization number one, and we are maybe a couple of decades away from when we can actually, like I said, participate in the meetings, but not have this rather silly looking legless. And I think they created legs finally,
I
so
was gonna say
that was a
they
huge announcement.
announced they announced legs
We
announcing
have legs.
legs. Yeah.
But still, I don't really like this kind of cartoonish presentation, to
No.
be honest, much. And yeah, just like before starting recording, Paul was doing like filter with a avatar with a cat,
Oh,
and
that's right.
we were talking how it was off and why it was happening. So I kind of either give me like really good quality that's almost like hologram of a person, or at
Yeah.
least decent presentation, or
Yeah.
or just don't. I don't really care for some kind of half-baked stuff right now, and I think many people don't either. All right, so that's one of those subjects. Meta, Microsoft, and
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
very we have legs now and stuff. Now, it wasn't SAP conference, but there was a big conference of German-speaking SAP user group, which is called DSAG. And
Oh,
once
that's right.
again, DSAG is there are many of those user groups. There is ASAG in North
Yeah.
America. There is SAUG, I think, in Australia, because ASAG was already taken by Americans. And I think DSAG is, of all those user groups, is most active and kind of feisty, but also kind of down to earth and realistic, which
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
always like their surveys, what they are communicating, and the way how they express to SAP what I think especially America's user group is kind of just dancing around like Americans do.
Yeah.
There is never a problem, always an issue. Um, so this is, I think, very great article and register. It covers DSAG results, and yeah, there's strongly worded statement about Rise. It was less last year, but this year still they're saying basically um, customers are still interested in on-premise. Whatever SAP thinks like about the
Yeah.
cloud, customers are just not really there with them. And one finding that I found interesting, let me see. Uh, I have it somewhere here. So yeah, so there was difference between how customers perceive importance of cloud with like SAP solutions versus non-SAP solutions,
Mm.
where it was much higher, which I think is pretty natural. What would you expect? Because SAP is kind of transactional system of record. It has all your very important enterprise stuff, and I guess that's where other maybe things may be more important than
Mm.
necessarily jumping into the cloud
Mm.
space. So very interesting results, and maybe worth writing about this more.
Yeah.
My other subject, which is pretty vague at this point because it's ongoing, and I still need to catch up with sessions, it's Devtoberfest. So it's we have
Yeah.
written about this last year. I did watch some sessions, and I there were really nice content. Especially they had like a theming by weeks. So last year they had like 1 week about cloud, 1 week about I think UX UI, etc. So the cloud week was especially interesting, and I really like those sessions. It is still ongoing because it's going to be the whole month. So the whole month of October there will be sessions about different subjects.
Oh yeah.
There were some I already bookmarked to watch. For example, Thomas Jung did interestingly coming back to ABAP pattern presentation, which I think might be interesting because ABAP education, it's a lot of what he has done before.
Yeah.
So yeah, so loosely Devtoberfest that is here. If anyone is interested to join it, kind of mid-flight, it will still be ongoing next week when we publish. So go to SAP Community. This is SAP Community website, and right here you can find all the links to it if you need to. All right, and then the last but not least, it is also kind of very general observations about DevOps. I found this report, and it's not an SAP, so nothing to do with SAP specifically.
Mm.
It was just research by, I'm not even sure like what is this dev
I was gonna
class.
say I've never seen that place
Yeah,
before.
I just stumbled upon it through some like link of a link.
Hmm.
Um, and So what I kind of read through this because I'm generally interested in DevOps subject, specifically, of course, in SAP aspects, but within SAP, especially on-premise and in ABAP, I mean, there's limited amount of stuff you can do with DevOps. And
Yeah.
this talks mostly about like Google research and yada, yada, yada. But I think their last message is actually the most important one because it says that, no matter the tools, your most important piece here is really your culture. And I think this observation is really what resonates a lot with myself and my experiences in SAP
Yeah.
shops is that is really kind of the killer of your DevOps if
Yeah.
you do not have culture that allows you to work in this way. And especially this statement, like high trust, low blame cultures focused on performance are much more likely to have above average adoption of emergency security practices and DevOps and everything basically adoption of any technology. And they have some maybe personal stories to tell there how I was in totally opposite cultures and how that totally did not work at
I
all. So yeah.
when you talk about like culture being the key thing, or they talk about it, and
Hmm.
you're uh, you know
Reflecting on
analyzing
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I immediately my head immediately my internal like agreement disagreement needle goes full to agree,
Hmm.
right? Because man, have I seen how like especially I mean it's the SAP dev shops for the most part places I have worked either as a consultant or as an employee, the culture is completely broken.
Hmm.
Like completely broken. And I don't even know who to blame for that. Maybe there's something different about SAP versus other teams. I don't know. But the culture has been so utterly broken that to me, as I could think back to a couple places I've worked now, where like there were big teams,
Hmm.
but there was no way. If we had even talked about it, there was no way it was going to happen. No way. At least in any kind of reasonable
Hmm.
uh smart way, it just wasn't gonna happen. Wasn't gonna happen.
I'm
So
actually.
I can totally see that culture thing being a killer of
Mm,
any sort of proactive look at this stuff.
it's since this report is talking about it, I'm guessing it's definitely not like SAP's only problem, but I'm still curious if it is more prevalent in SAP world. It
Yeah,
would be very interesting to see some kind of maybe survey of like SAP developers or rather ABAP developers versus non-SAP and
yeah,
see like how is it similar or different and
yeah.
how culture is maybe I don't know. I always think that I think SAP ABAP developers, I would say specifically, I don't want to say that they tend to be more like conservative, but it's not really because of something who they are or what they do. It's SAP just encourages that by kind of maybe unintentionally with their backwards compatibility and with all
Yeah.
that SAP itself being, coming from mainframe world, so there is a lot of baggage. So that
Yeah.
inadvertently, I think, kind of contributes to this may be less progressive culture sometimes. I know there are lots of great people and really great SAP customers that are doing
Yeah.
nice work there, but they are more like, I think it's maybe, let's say maybe another ecosystem. It's like, okay, here is like your progressive side, here is slightly less progressive side. But in SAP, I think it's like this, maybe here is your progressive side, and quite many of them are like quite far, I think, from there. So I think
Yeah.
disconnect between poor and rich in terms of technology and
Yeah.
progressiveness is pretty big.
And I think, I think you're totally, I think you're spot on with that. I think too, maybe it's how leadership in organizations
Mm.
view SAP
Mm-hmm.
stuff, because I think they really don't view it as especially the SAP dev, the customization slash, you know, sort of crappy business app dev kind of stuff that
Mm-hmm.
goes on top of SAP usually. I don't think most businesses view that as like, oh, good, we're getting lots of value out of that.
Mm-hmm.
They view it a little more as like keeping the lights on kind of
Yeah,
stuff, where
utilitarian.
I would just imagine that they don't see a lot of value in investing and improving how SAP dev gets done,
Yeah.
because typically like the slow pace and the slow whatever is something that like change management kind of wants anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it winds up not mattering very much, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to, because so this is a roundabout way of agreeing with you, is that there's a lot of bright, brilliant people who are doing SAP dev stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think companies look at them as high value centers
Yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you're right. All right. So
Oof.
so there
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, sorry. And on that depressing note, we will take us out and say, hey, guess what? This is our stuff we're thinking of, and who knows what makes it in the final thing.
Yeah.
The only way to find out is to subscribe, send us some money, bribe us with other things to get your preferred stories in there, all that kind of stuff. But this is Paul and Yelena saying thanks for watching again, guys.
Thank you. See you next time.